It's January 18th, 2024. I try to stay unbranded as best I can, except there's some brand called Columbia. It's someone's label, it's somebody's money making opportunity in the grand schematic. I just don't know who collects from where in this In God We Trust. So I don't represent the Columbia necessarily. But I started the morning. I started the morning um, listening to some of the sorcery and the media outlet um, of what the theater participants are throwing at my face in this obscene. I mean, it is just like, oh, it it's wretched. It is not. I mean, like, again, they're orchestrating and they're doing community theater, and I know there's a professional component, and I want to be proud to be an American. I do. And the way that they have really gathered in this area as of late is is what it is. So, um, I started this morning with a story that dawned on me in whatever. At, so I'm thinking this morning of, I'm like, I didn't grow up on a farm or in a barn. Um, I guess it was more, I mean, I grew up Long Island in North America. So is that technically homeschooled? Perhaps. Um, was there some form of public engagement of perhaps? Depends on who needs to know and who's telling the story and who's receiving the information, I suppose. Um, so I grew up in this harbor, Lloyd Harbor setting. Um, and it looked a certain way, it sounded a certain way. It was where I was most comfortable. I mean, not a lot of friends per se, but at least it was peaceful. And I was hoping for that the person who said he was going to come and marry me would come forth, and then I would be with he, journey, and have children together the way it's supposed to be. Although that somehow did not come to fruition. Um, what is interesting, I wrote this morning about my travels, is I was I've been out of state, but within the lower 48 several times. But in my youth, I was taken once to Rutgers. But I it was with a girl that I had gone to school with. Her brother was going there, and that meeting was set up. I later find out today when I looked up Rutgers University, that's a state school. Um, it's in New Jersey. Again, these are just facts for the area. No, I mean, I can find relevance in everything and anything that I've ever done, but it just, it doesn't make sense. Where it hasn't, the puzzle pieces haven't come together. Now I'm in this quandary, and my children are here. Everything is wrong, and it's starting to make sense in hindsight. Um, so taken at Rutgers, but it was like this twilight almost. I mean, full of strangers because they're all some state whatever. Like, is it a college? Is it a university? I don't know. It has the word state next to it. Um, and I met with people, I don't know their names. I didn't know them that night. Um, I don't really know their faces or names now in this part of my life. Um, and for this journal purpose, for myself and my children and my father. And there's this, um, then there's this other trip where I got a call on the Blue Princess phone. Um, and that was somebody who attended Yale. He was Dan from Study Hall. He invited me to Florida, for which I went to meet with the college advisor, whatever that means. There was no talks of college when I was in with doing my thesis on Disney with Dr. Egan and Mr. Haley. Um, so that was interesting. So I don't really have a very good recollection of who I met with and what was going on down there either. Um, but again, when I look, I'm now watching Dr. Pole, and I see that reindeer go into the season of something called a rut. For me, a rut is like a ditch. Like you get sent off the pathway into a rut, and it's inside of a ditch, and you're stranded. That's what it means for me. I now realize that bulls in season, mating season, they go through at reindeers a rut, which was Dr. Pole's television. It's called The Incredible Dr. Pole. Um, he's from Michigan. And so then there's this um, tie in of, like, there was a column I've heard of, never read, about Dear John. I don't know who, is it Lansbury? I don't know. And then there's John Deere, the tractor company, which Smithsonian Channel says is Ohio related. He's the most famous blacksmith out there. Who knew? I didn't until I watched this, whatever, televised special on Smithsonian Channel, um, which has some tusk reference to it, for whatever that means in the body, and the blood. And so I'm, again, you don't know these things are coming at you, or I didn't. I had the special child on the special star timing at Star Fleet important, perhaps, if we're speaking of Star Wars and Star Trek. I don't know. Um, but it's a birthing timing mechanic I call calcaneus calculus. Um, and so the meeting with the Rutgers persons, I don't know who, and I don't know anything about them. And then, however, the Florida trip was whatever and whatever there. Um, so those things happened in my real life. Then today, I mean, I broke my leg. So, um, and I wrote also, like, I don't understand how these persons just show up in destructive behaviors that I'm not all right with. it's not in my birthing order. It's not in, it should never have been in my season, but I don't know what happened. At such a high level of I don't know what happened. I know there are people who know. I'm just I'm starting to put some of my pieces together. But if they're at such high level of organization and function at theater and orchestra and mechanics and engineers and all sorts of things, then that is really frightening because philosophically, that is where like free will has been taken from me. Um, so I go to this Northwell Health in like Stars Rehabilitation. Like you always look to the North Star. At least that's what the In God We Trust. Like the Bible always says the North Star is that guiding light. So I go there, um, and I'm going through the physical rehabilitation of my ankle, and I'm looking at the crew of doctors or medical professionals that are there, or I don't want to mislabel. Um, and I've gone in, they had country music on, somebody might say redneck music, whatever. Then I've gone in, they had some kind of French rap. I've gone in today, I think it was some kind of Spanish music, and I'm just like, excuse me. I was like, again, I'm tolerant to a degree. And then all of a sudden, so I said, excuse me. I said, I was like, s'il vous plaît. I was like, per favore. I was like, could you please just change it to something English? English speaking. I was like, please. And so they all kind of laughed. And then they said, oh, Mateus, during Christmas season, he loves Mariah Carey. If Mariah Carey ever shows up, he is so in love with her. During Christmas, he wanted 12 days of Mariah Carey for Christmas. And I was just like, yeah, well, that's interesting. So I was like, especially since I've seen her labeled on the TV as the Queen of Christmas. And then I said, but I take that with a grain of salt because then there's something called a Queen Latifah, whatever that means. Um, and then I said to them, so they changed it, and they changed it to Mariah Carey. And then I sat there and I'm listening, and of course, it's just, and I said, we talked, the public was talking about the radio, and there was a woman older than I was who said that she just, again, the music that's coming through the radio right now, it's whatever it is. And the younger generation didn't really say much. And so I said to them, so I went through the history of in the 80s and 90s, I was able to listen to what was on the radio, and it just seemed melodic. I didn't really think too much about it. I was like, but after the year 20, really after the year 2020, it is just like, ooh, it is something. I just, it's so broken. And I said to them, I asked this Mateus who listens to Mariah Carey, I asked him, I said, have you heard of, I said, my son, I have many sons, but my first son, uh, have you heard of this thing called Breaking Benjamin? And he said, no. And I said, oh, I was like, well, it's very angry music. But again, my son's name is Benjamin, and that is what he's arrived to here in New York. Um, and one of the other therapists he had heard of it. He said, oh no, he says, I know what it is. He says, I listen to it all the time. I was like, oh, all right. Um, so I'm just going to reference this particular music, um, since it has my son's namesake in it. It's called Diary of Jane. Um, and it's just, I his generation, it's almost like if there could be a stereo or a speaker of just what they arrived to after I was derailed by something in a crazy donkey meeting and then later a blacksmith through I feel no fault of my own, but here we are at however theater works. So, which is still outside of my control. I hear today they made an announcement about a former President Trump. They say that something about God. They have it all over something called The View. The evangelicals are all over this. I don't know whom they are. I don't normally watch The View or listen to it, but it seemed like something to listen to since it has the word God in it. I explained to my children um, that there is a very real part of God, like not to define God, but if God had a geographical and oceanic address at whatever the D stands for, and it and knowing I'm in a monetary system that has in God we trust, um, and knowing that not one particular Bible necessarily. I've been picking through some of the with the ordained ministers or priestesses or whatever priestess, asking her for some advice as to what she believes God to be and how their system is working in the Episcopal, since the one I went to in St. John's Episcopal is different. What we did was different than what this Zion Episcopal is doing. The same Red Cross, but just it's a little tactile different. I don't know why. Just to be tactful, carefully tactful, like don't want to be tacky. Um, but like if my son had a voice, what would it sound like at Glenview? I grew up Glenway. There's a Glenview Hall located in the museum. Put it forth again. If I saw in the Great Plains, there's a story about Buffalo Bill and the fur trade business that seemed to be very in the Great Plains. They have a geographical designation of the fur out like trade outpost, but again, that's in the Great Plains section of the lower 48, which are just it is one country that is just it's got a flag and it's got a lot of people with a lot of heart and spirit, and it's important. And then, of course, there's the water district, and we're touched. It's like, which beast are we touching? It's just one side of the beast touches the ring of fire, and then the other side touches more geographical, whatever. Um, so there's just so much, and then there's the I've heard there's Buffalo Bills inside the agency of NFL. Again, these are rumors that are confirmable by those Americans with heart and spirit. So, I just, I came home and I listened to like my son's spirit through the radio, and I'm just going to make mention of it real quick since they have Trump now with campaign ads about the from the evangelicals and God. Um, Again, I had a heart to heart with my children last night. Just that when they hear the word God, don't be so frightened or don't be so turned off by it. It is an important topic. It's just how you think of it. Alexa, play Breaking Benjamin, The Diary of Jane.
songs anytime you like. Just say try Amazon Music Unlimited, The Diary of Jane, and similar songs on Amazon Music.
The doctor's here. Good. Let her in. I won't be able to play the whole song. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. Earth, solar system, Milky Way universe, galaxy is broken. There's a part of the song where it goes, "What have I become?"